All right, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for joining me. Can I, just a couple of guys at the back, if you guys come a bit forward. Some troublemakers at the back as well, particularly. We want to keep an eye on you guys. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, their leaders past, present and emerging, and pay my respects to their elders. My name is Tanvir Uddin. I want to take you guys through a bit of a journey of talking through careers and trying to hopefully broaden understanding and perspectives of how about going about the career journey perspective. How many of you guys feel very worried about what to choose in your future university or jobs? I'm still working it out, and I'm graduated almost 18 years ago from high school. And that's because it's a journey. It's an ongoing journey, and it's a journey of adventure and discovery. So I want to share a little bit of what I've gone through. I also want to share a little bit about failures, because it's, I think, something that a lot of people don't talk about, and the challenges of balancing both career and professional development with personal lives. And as Muslims, we don't sort of divorce our professional careers with our families, with our communities and our faith. And it's all about that integration between all of those things together. The other thing I want to do is I want to go through a couple of frameworks with you guys and give you a bit of an exercise to do that can help you think through how to select careers. There is no one particular advice, there's no one particular strategy that's going to solve all of your career problems. And it's really that journey of working through. So these are a couple of tools. There's a lot more out there, obviously, so hopefully it will be a benefit. I'm also going to allow for some Q&A at the end, okay? So really would like you guys to please jump in with any questions, don't hesitate. And I'm going to try and make it interactive, so there'll be questions I'll be asking you. I've got some chopper lollies to give out, so people, if you want a chopper lolly or you just want to be heard, please do participate. So bismillah, we'll get started. The first thing I want to really emphasize is that I'm going to provide one perspective. And this is my story and my experience, and I'd encourage you to go and listen to lots of other people and hear from many different people and to piece together their stories. You're never going to follow one particular person and copy exactly what they do, and it's actually not the right thing to do. So you don't kind of say, oh, I want to be a doctor just like you or a teacher just like you. Everyone's crafting their own stories. But what I want you to kind of focus more on is what can you learn from some of the struggles and learnings, and what are some things that you might be able to apply in your own lives. And the other reason, but disclaimer, is I've taken a very unconventional route. So I'm probably going to get in trouble by your parents for telling you a lot of things, but hopefully it'll give you a different perspective. And I'm a bit, I'm very passionate about the things I do, and I'm also passionate about speaking against some of the very traditional ways a lot of people in our community approach careers. So that's my disclaimer there. So a little bit about myself, and I think I want to start with my background, because I draw a lot of strength and a lot of inspiration from my background and my identity. So I'm a Bangladeshi by birth, migrated to Australia when I was 6 years old. Grew up in southwest Sydney, and really proud of where I've grown up. I grew up in Bankstown at the time in the late 90s and early 2000s, where it was rated the highest crime government area in Australia. I remember waking up at night to like gunshots everywhere. I remember cars being burnt on the park across. I remember being attempted to have muggings on me, but I couldn't be more prouder of being in that community. And I remember many years later when I walked into some of the biggest institutions globally, or even in some of the top consulting firms, people had never heard about Punchbowl or Bankstown. I was like the first brown Muslim to be at those sort of events. But that's something that I bring, and it's really unique, and I draw a lot of inspiration from that. Bangladesh is particularly of interest because I go there a lot. I've done a lot of volunteer work there. I've got a lot of family there. And I recently did a lot of my PhD research there. The other aspect of my background or things that are about me is I'm really passionate about and driven by trying to make social change. And particularly the area that I work at is international development, about international development relating to poverty alleviation, reduction in inequality, and supporting economic growth in communities around the world. This is me in one of my jobs when I used to work in Indonesia with a coconut sugar farmer, and we were in a very remote part of the world there where there was no electricity, no running water, and we were trying to create programs to help farmers access markets to sell their products. So that's something that runs as a theme throughout the work that I do. I'll share a little bit about my university and education journey and kind of highlight how sometimes your university pathways, they don't follow a very linear pathway, and that sometimes it's okay to try and experiment with different types of subjects and things. But also I want to talk a little bit about, in showing my journey, how you can weave. Today it's more possible to weave a lot of your faith and things that you value into your academic pursuits, because studies have become far more interdisciplinary. And what I mean by, does anyone know what interdisciplinary is? Exactly. So in the olden days, you'd kind of just do a particular career, and the degree and the career would be very much aligned together. So an accounting degree to become an accountant, engineering to become an engineer. But nowadays, we are living in a society that's far more integrated. So you might have a situation like, for example, if you want to construct a building like this, right? You wouldn't just get engineers and architects to construct a building. You'll get people who are involved with social work to understand about how does it impact on people from minority communities with disabilities. You might get psychologists involved to think about how it might affect people's mental health. You might get specialists with childhood autism to think about how would autistic children or people on the spectrum interact with a space like this. So we are far more interdisciplinary than we used to be. And it's really important to have that broad perspective. And that allows you to broaden your own understanding and learn from other perspectives. In my undergrad, I did arts and law, and so it was a very strongly focused on social sciences, but I also did a major in economics, and I ended up doing an honours in economics. So I had both social sciences and sort of more qualitative studies, along with quantitative studies, because I enjoyed a lot of maths in high school. Then I started so it was a very generalist degree, and I did that because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. So I had friends who were like doctors and they wanted to do medicine, or I had friends in accounting or engineering. I was sort of like, okay, I don't really know where I want to go with this. But then increasingly I started to fall into the area of specialization of finance, and particularly in Islamic finance. And I'll come back to why that was my area of calling in a moment. And I went to do that degree in Spain, in the capital of Spain called Madrid, and at a business school there called IE. Then I continued my studies further with a PhD in Islamic finance applied to microfinance. And I did that in the law faculty at the University of Sydney. And I was supervised by a revert named, who's now an associate professor, Salim Farah. And it was a really exciting time to be able to do a degree in something that's aligned with my faith at a prestigious university, and to combine those two together and also draw upon my undergrad. So that sort of journey has been really quite, it's something that's far more possible to do, particularly now. We have Muslim academics in many faculties around the country, and you have the ability. People say, oh, how is it possible you can do something related to Islam in your PhD? It's very possible to propose those subjects because research allows you to do that. You can construct your research questions. A little bit about my careers, and particularly, I've worked internationally in many countries. I started my career in a consulting firm called McKinsey & Company here in Sydney. But then I went and traveled abroad to work in Indonesia, and spent some time there, and that was the photo there with the farmer there with the Clinton Foundation. And then I also spent some time in Saudi Arabia, and I lived in Jeddah, which was a really amazing experience because I was able to stay close to the Haramain. I could just, organize a trip to go to do Umrah anytime, or go do ziyarah at the Prophet's Mosque. And it was a very cosmopolitan city. Why am I telling you a little bit about the international cities? It's because a lot of people growing up in Australia is in such a far corner of the world. We're an island continent. We're far away from the rest of the world, and it feels like this is everything. And of course, there's a lot of great things to be grateful about living in Australia. But what's happening around the world is that a lot of countries are developing very fast. There's a lot of exciting things happening across technology, across economic growth. For example, the Middle East last year had experienced the highest level of economic growth compared to many parts of the world. If you've also been to Southeast Asia, anyone from Southeast Asia? Indonesia, Malaysia? If you go to those countries, anyone from Turkey? Yep, from Turkey. If you've been to these cities, you've been to those countries, you'll see how exciting it is that they are rapidly changing. You've been there recently? What are some things, when was the last time you went before this time?
About 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Would you see a big change?
More economic economically is going down.
Well, there's some other issues going on, but in terms of infrastructure, the high-speed railways, the massive metro expansions, the new overbridges and motorways. I recently visited there last September. So it's an exciting time to see the Muslim world and actually participate in the global economy. So beyond Australia, beyond Sydney, I went to Malik Fahd for my primary school, and it sometimes surprises me, probably about 90% of my friends were born and raised within 5 kilometers of Malik Fahd, or 5 to 10 kilometers of Malik Fahd, and they've never moved out of that place. They've worked there, lived there, they're raising their families there, which is all good and true, but the thing is they're also now asking me, it's like, oh, what's happening in other parts of the world? And finally, one of my friends, who is one of the most unassuming kind of persons, originally from Indonesia, he's now doing a job in Austria, and he's traveling around exploring the Middle East as well. So the Muslim world is open and for business, for activities, and I would strongly encourage you to have a look at what's happening around the world, and even just close to our neighbors in Indonesia. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about alternative career pathways. And particularly, I want to do two things. One is talk about, there's an emerging area of the economy that's worth looking at, where people don't need any particular degrees to get jobs, and it's a very exciting part of the world. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, and I mentioned I was going to be a little bit controversial, is about the traditional career paths that everyone takes. And so I've put up a bit of a meme here about Asian parents, but it's probably applicable to many other cultures as well. How many people's parents are asking them or telling them subtly to become a doctor? Yeah? Feeling the pressure? Let me tell you my story. So my parents, we're from Bangladesh. Of course, they, as any other Asian parents would want one of our kids, one of the siblings to be doctors. So alhamdulillah, I did really well in my HSC. I got 8 out of 9.9, but I didn't sit the UMAT. And so by the time the HSC results came out, my parents were like, so you're going to be doing medicine, right? And I said, well, I didn't do the UMAT, so I'm not eligible. So that was my way of getting out of that one. There's obviously a lot of pressure to choose very traditional career paths, and of course, look, people are doing a lot of great things with that. But what I kind of want to talk about is something about, it's called the concept of marginal impact. Anyone know what marginal impact is? Anyone heard of that concept? Okay. So the concept of marginal impact is the idea that what is the incremental value that you can add to that particular job or position that no one else can do, right? So, for example, I did law. I could have become a lawyer. And there are lots of, and I probably could have had a good chance at doing law. I did really well my law degree. I also did a PhD in law. But I thought about, okay, there's a lot of other great lawyers out there. And some of them are my friends. They're doing amazing things. Some of them are barristers, solicitors in firms. Some of them are partners in law firms. What I figured out was, I'm not sure I can do much more than what they're already doing. What's my unique skill set and what's my own passions that I can bring to the table that no one else can add? And that's something to think about. Why would you just be another teacher or another engineer or another psychologist or a physiotherapist if you could be adding more value to something else? That's something to think about. That's what the marginal impact is. A lot of people pursue jobs and they end up just being another number. Just another teacher in the system, another doctor in the system, and then end up being a little bit unhappy about that position. Okay, so as you think through, and we're going to do that a little bit more of that in the exercise on Ikigai and the career evaluation on the sheets in front of you, but it's something to think about. And what I want you to really challenge your thinking is, why do you really want to do that thing? Or why is it that someone's telling me to do that thing? If you're just chasing money or position or prestige or status or some sort of other material gain, it's not going to sustain you. And even if it does sustain you, eventually you're going to tire out of it. The other aspect to think about, and particularly as we are members of a global ummah, including Muslims, non-Muslims, all sorts of people, and increasingly we think about animals and inanimate objects, and actually they have value and significance in our faith. What more could you be doing for the ummah than you are currently or in that particular role? And that's something we challenge ourselves to every day, because we're all members of the society. And we interact with society in a very tangible way. I'll give you a really good example. If you're, who's had coffee today? Anyone like coffee? Anyone had coffee? Where did you get your coffee? I got mine from Dare. I just picked up the Woolies. Where'd you get your coffee? Instant coffee from home. Now, in that small example of having coffee, we are having a profound global impact. Let me tell you how. The coffee beans that is used that's roasted and eventually ground and then mixed with hot water and milk to make the coffee is produced by a coffee bean farmer somewhere in the world, right? And that coffee bean is then grown. It's used, there's inputs into the ground to make the coffee plant grow, and then it's transported all the way here. So by just having a drink of coffee, we need to ask ourselves that coffee that I'm paying for, is that enabling that farmer to live above a living wage, or is it exploiting that farmer? How about the clothes we wear, right? Or the plastics we consume? So in everything that we do, there is an impact. And this is starting to think broadly beyond what we do in our daily lives about our impact. All right, so I want to take a little bit talk about tech startups. And this is sort of a booming area of work, and this is the industry sort of vertical that I'm primarily working in. And tech startups have now become very dominant, and there's a lot of people working in the sector. But to make it a little bit tangible, who uses social media? Anyone use TikTok? Yes? Good. So these are all examples of social media companies using technology. They were all startups at one point, so small companies that grew really large. Or for example, anyone ordered with Uber recently? Uber Eats? Yep. That's another company that's built on technology, and it's a whole new industry that's come up. And you'll see today that some of the most successful companies in the world are technology startup companies that only have been around for the last 10 or 15 years. Tesla, for example, Facebook, Google, since the early 2000s. So this sector has come out of nowhere, and it's attracting talent from all over the place. What are tech startups, and what do they offer? The first thing, of course, is that they're tech-enabled. So anyone using technology is probably interacting with a company that's leveraging technology and built a startup company around it. The second aspect is that they're typically disrupting traditional businesses. So until Uber Eats came, how did you get food? How did you get food if you wanted to eat from a restaurant?
Go there.
You'd go there. So now you just sit at home and food comes to you. Exactly. So that's a disruption of that behavior. Other examples are, for example, if you wanted to purchase a plane ticket, back in the early days when we migrated to Australia, we had to go to a travel agent, pay some money, pay a deposit, then transfer some more money, paperwork. It could take days or weeks, and now you just book it online in seconds. That's an example of disruption. The other aspect is a lot of these companies are growing really fast. So they're typically, they become global really quickly, they expand over a region. So they're typically fast-paced growth, and that's what makes them very exciting. A lot of people want to enter this industry because of that reason. The other thing is flexibility. This is also an important topic, and particularly something that there's a lot more awareness today about mental health. What was the big event this week in terms of mental health? Are You OK Day, very good. So Are You OK Day and concepts around ergonomic sitting postures, flexible work time, to be able to accommodate time around family, school drop-offs, pickups. All of these flexibility in the workplace is a very new concept. If you asked your parents back then, how would they ask for a leave? They'd have to fill out forms, they'd have to get HR to approve. So one of the things that a lot of tech startup companies are trying to do is to promote flexibility. So that allow people to be able to enjoy, to maintain their lives and to work in a way that meets their requirements, but also contribute to their jobs. So for example, in my company, I work from home. I sit at home, I work on the patio, I work on my desk, I also work at a library or cafes. And so working remotely has become a common thing. So a lot of startups try and promote that culture, so you don't have to be at a desk. I know that some jobs, unfortunately, they cannot be remote. Obviously, if you're a teacher, you've got to be there, or if you're working in retail. But a lot of tech startup jobs allow you that flexibility. That's also a really great thing about it. Last year, my wife and I, we were working out of Medina and Makkah while we were doing Umrah and we're doing Ziyarah. We were working, so we'd get up at like 2 or 4 a.m., 2 to 4 a.m., work our Australian day jobs, and then go and hang out. We also spent a week in Istanbul working and traveling. So that's what tech startups allow you to do, because it's all technology. I basically work with my team using Microsoft Teams to communicate or set meetings. We use asynchronous technologies like Notion, which allows us to use documents. So we don't have to be in a particular space. It's all cloud-based, which makes it really flexible. I also can set my own hours. So in the morning, if I want to meet up with a friend or just work out of the beach. 2 weeks ago, I worked out of Jarvis Bay for a week, had my meetings on the beach. So tech startups are definitely quite an exciting way to do that. The other thing, of course, is mission focus. And this is actually quite important for me. it's not just another job. It's not just about trying to make money. And I'll tell a little bit about the tech startups that I've worked in. A lot of tech startups have a very positive mission out there. They're trying to do something better. They're trying to improve the way people work. They're trying to improve mobility. They're trying to improve access, or they're trying to reduce the impact on the environment. So quickly, I'll go through a couple of the tech startups that I've been involved in, and I want to share with you how again, faith has inspired me in those particular roles. The first startup that I worked in when I moved back to Australia a couple of years ago was a company called Brighte, and they provide financing for people to install solar panels on their roofs. And one of the products they developed was a 0% interest product. And that's really relevant for me as a Muslim because interest is haram. And so they were pioneering that product. These aren't Muslims necessarily, but it was a company that was promoting environmental sustainability and using products that were financially aligned with the Islamic faith. The second startup is a company called Vyro that I co-founded, and we were trying to create a marketplace to sell electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, vehicles in general, transportation in Australia, contribute about 20% of carbon emissions in Australia, including everything. So transitioning to electric vehicles is a way to reduce the carbon footprint of Australia. And the third startup is the one that I'm working in currently, which is called Wholesum. We're trying to pioneer the access, trying to improve financial well-being for migrants and Muslims and millennials who aren't very literate about money and don't really know where to invest. And at the same time, we're trying to direct those investments towards projects and companies that try and do positive things like create jobs, reduce poverty. So this is how I've kind of, again, going back to my background, where these tech startup jobs have been really relevant and important for me. And the great thing is the jobs that are opened up in this industry don't require particular degrees, and sometimes you don't even need a degree at all. So this is an example of a common role in tech startups, because obviously technology, you need to have a lot of software engineers. This particular company will train you to become a software engineer in 4 months without a degree, and their starting salaries are like $100,000 plus. And there's a shortage of them. All right? So I would definitely recommend checking out. If you're interested in sort of technology and interested in sort of doing a job that's flexible, you can work from home, just work on your computer. You could be working on the beach. Software engineering, data science, these are some of the jobs that are available. So this is some examples there, and you can do it in just 4 months. That particular website provides that certification. I want to quickly touch a little bit about failures. And I want to talk about failures or challenges in both professional and personal life. And one of the things is in my early jobs, I didn't do really well. These are 2 companies where I worked in and I was accepted into a fellowship, which is a fellowship or a graduate program, a sort of early stage where you're able to, they train you and then you get through the program and you can get a senior job or a more permanent job. In 2 of these fellowships, I didn't complete them. I was asked to leave before I could finish. I didn't fit in, I wasn't doing very well, and it really sucked. So everyone else was doing well, and I was thinking, okay, I've got great marks, I've got a lot of energy, I can do something, and I didn't succeed. And I had to go back and find a new job. Especially that last job in ICD, I was asked to leave from Saudi, I had to come back to Australia, and I had no job, I had nothing. A lot of my friends had jobs, had houses, got married already, and I was at a very low point. Another low point for me was during my PhD journey. So in 2021, I quit my job to finish my PhD because at that point I was falling behind. I started my PhD in 2013 and alhamdulillah, I only finished it a few months ago, but it took 10 years to finish and I was really struggling. So I took a year off work. I thought, okay, I'm going to focus on my PhD, I'll get it done. And a few months in, my supervisor wrote this comment to me, he said, unfortunately, I don't think this chapter embodies doctoral level quality argument. He's saying it in a very nice way, but in other words, you're just not up to it. Like, you might want to rethink this. He didn't quite say it in those words. He asked me to go back and have another go. And this is when I had quit my job. At the time I was married and I was really at a low point. I didn't quite know what I was going to do. The other thing, of course, was in my personal life. I was trying lots of things. I was traveling, doing other things, and I wasn't able to get married. And a lot of my friends were married, and I was getting a bit of a FOMO fear. So this is a photo from one of my last friends' weddings, out of my close group of friends, and I was the only unmarried one there. And people would ask me, what's going on? You're not married? What's happening with your life? So, what I'm trying to say there is that life will go through ups and downs, and the main thing is to keep focused on that longer term goal. So I want to share a couple of learnings And again, these are learnings based on learning from the hard way, which is make mistakes, hit rock bottoms. And I'm hoping that these learnings will allow you to perhaps sidestep some of the mistakes that I made. The first thing I'll talk about is money. I meet a lot of young people and they say, oh, I want to find a job that makes me a lot of money. And this is something I've reflected a lot about because, alhamdulillah, I've worked for many years, I've saved money, I've made money, I've lost money, and I've been in the world of finance, so I deal with money a lot. And I think a lot about money, and one of the things I keep coming back to is something that my grandfather used to say, so my maternal grandfather.
Welcome to Flutter Forward. It's a really, really exciting day, and thank you for tuning in.
I don't know what that is.
John, I'm a developer relations engineer.
Oh.
I'm Flutter and Dart team. And my name is...
Okay, sorry, that was a bit of a glitch there. YouTube started playing, okay. So he used to say that don't chase money. Let money chase you. And I didn't really appreciate it until many years later. And that's because we live in a age where everything is valued by money. You quantify time with money. You value people by money. You give more respect to someone who has more money than less money. And if you think about Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and a lot of the Sahaba, they weren't necessarily the wealthiest people. Some of them were super wealthy, but even if they were wealthy, they didn't really give much regard to money. And the thing that is actually quite alarming and worrying about the modern society we live in is that we might have a lot of material things in our lives. We might have phones, we might have houses, we might have cars, we might have money, but we are far more disconnected from each other than ever before. This is a particular book by an author called Johann Hari. I strongly recommend you read this book. I feel like everyone should read this book before they graduate high school because it's an important sort of, he goes through a number of what are called lost connections, but then he identifies things to connect people. And one of the things he talks about, the first thing he talks about the lost connection is basically we are disconnected from purpose. And if you think about it, I was reflecting when I read the book, as Muslims we have purpose. We have purpose of why Allah SWT has created us, to worship Him and to be His representative on earth and to do good things as the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's character portrayed. And money sometimes becomes a barrier to that because it makes us more short term in our thinking. So one thing I'll strongly emphasize is don't worry about money. Don't make decisions based on money because your rizq is already set. You can relax. Allah SWT has taken care of you. Everyone is there to support you. So if money was off the table, what would you do differently? That's something I'd like you to think about. So your first job might not be the most well paid, but it might give you the best learning and the best experience that ends up putting you in a position that will be so much more impactful for you and your life. And I'll give you a true story from my example. My first job was working at Muslim Aid Australia. And I entered there on a very low salary. And I remember one of my friends from around uni time was saying, Tanvir, are you going to be okay? Like you're working for a charity, you've got good marks, it's probably not going to pay you much, are you going to be okay? And I look back, that was one of the best things I did because I learned a lot and that thing led to many other opportunities that came after it. So don't devalue what you want to do and don't just measure it by money. The second lesson I want to talk about is gratitude. I had many points in my life where I achieved great things, I was recognized, I got a lot of awards and scholarships, and it got to my head. There were times where I became very arrogant. And I became arrogant and I became very complacent. I became complacent with my time, with my money, with what I was doing. And I forgot to remember what it took to get to that point. There's a verse in the Quran that I really reflect a lot upon, and I think I remind myself back to and I tell a lot of people about it, which is a verse from Surah Ibrahim, La in shakartum la azidannakum. Allah SWT says, and the verse, there's actually two verses here that go next to each other. The first verse, Allah SWT says, be grateful and He will increase. It's a guarantee, it's a promise, right? And the second verse says, if you are not, just be aware of Allah's wrath and be aware of what can happen. It's not a guarantee that anything will happen to you, but Allah's not just warning. There's a light warning about that. So always keep yourself on the ground. Even if you have the money and the job and the title, don't walk around like as if you own the place. Remember that a lot of other people did not have the same opportunities as you did. So one of the things I think about is, I cannot attribute success just to myself. My parents worked hard to migrate to this country. My teachers put a lot of effort in. People funded me. People mentored me. to get me to who I am today. Without them, I'd be nothing. So how can I walk around thinking I'm the one who caused all this success? Ultimately, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever success you achieve, always try and think about who and how has led you to that point. And the thing is, in Islamic history, and I was reflecting on my time in Turkey, where Muslims achieved significant success in the world. They dominated societies, they ran economies, they had huge empires, and sometimes they crumbled. And there's people you might know in your own lives whose lives crumble out of the arrogance and the haughtiness of where they get to. So take a lot of learning from that experience and to draw upon that. The third one I will say, and this is one of the best career advices I would recommend. I'm sure a lot of you will work hard in your studies. Doesn't matter what marks you get. I'm sure you'll work hard in your careers. And so that advice is given, and anyone else will give it. But one thing that I would say in my experience that has paid me very well, I'm not just talking financially, but in terms of personal growth, spiritual growth, and the ability to interact in society, are good friends. Now, Friends, and this is a bit of a meme, kind of joking around the friends characters, but friends are not just there who kind of tell you to avoid the haram or to encourage you to do good things, but friends will always be there to support you through whatever endeavors you're trying to do. Whether you're trying to start a new business, whether you're trying to pursue a new career, they're going to be there to do that. These are my friends, and the thing I like about my friends, they're all intelligent, lovely, charming people, but one of the things I really like about them is they're very humble, they're very down to earth. When I meet up with them, we're not kind of talking about what car we want to drive, or how much money we want to make, or how flashy clothes are. We don't talk about that. We just talk about each other's lives and what's going on, what challenges we're facing. And through life, you'll experience a lot of challenges. One of my friends has 2 autistic children who are on the spectrum. His wife can no longer work because she's a full-time carer. Another of my friends, his mother passed away when we were still at uni from blood cancer. Another one of my friends couldn't finish undergrad. But we all have our own challenges in life, but we stick together, we support each other through that. And actually, they've been some of my biggest support when I started my new business. And some of them were my first customers, some of them helped me open doors to new people. So friendships are probably one of the best career advice I can give you, because they'll keep you on track. Because there's no point being very successful. Like, let's say you're like an Elon Musk, right? Super arrogant, just goes around doing whatever he wants, and might not have very friends. Maybe he's very lonely, who knows? Right? So just because someone looks like they're very successful, it might not mean that they're having a very meaningful life. But good friends will help you make sure you have a great life. All right, so that's enough about that. I spoke a little bit. I wanted to give you some theory and give you some explanation. We're going to jump into our first exercise. So the first exercise we're going to do is something called a career decision matrix. There's many different names for it. Has everyone got a piece of paper and a pen? You don't have one. Let's get you one. All right, so this exercise is a relatively straightforward exercise. Yes, here we go. Just a pen. Oh, thank you. Very kind of you. Oh, here's that. This is a simplified version of an exercise that is helpful for you to try to quantify or quantitatively evaluate whether a particular career is of relevance for you. Now, I've done it simplified because I've only got 5 career slots. You can do it as many as you want, and you can keep changing it. You can come back to it. It's not a fixed thing. So on the top, I want you to write down 5 particular careers or jobs that you're kind of thinking about. It doesn't have to be things you are very sure about. Just put them down for the sake of evaluating. So can everyone put 5 things across the top? So the boxes on the top here, these grey boxes, put just 5 of them. So put whatever it is. It might be a particular type of, it could be a nurse, it could be a teacher, it could be a physio, it could be a scientist, whatever it might be. Try and be as specific as possible, if you can. If you can't, you're like, look, I'm not quite sure yet about the specific area, so I might just say scientist, but I don't know what type of scientist, or I might say I'm a doctor. Whatever it might be, just put 5 of them across. Yeah, we'll come back to that. So everyone done the careers at the top? Okay, if you've already done that, fantastic. Then we're going to identify factors. Now, I talked about a number of concepts in the presentation I did so far. I talked about flexibility of work. I talked a little bit about money. I talked about positive impact or mission. I talked a little bit about career growth. I talked about alignment with faith. So I mentioned a couple of factors. You don't have to choose these factors. Each set of factors are unique to you. You might have your own priorities of what's important. You might want geographic priority. So you're like, I really want to work in a part of Sydney so I can be close to my family or my community. You might have preference for dealing with certain demographics of people. You might have factors around, like maybe you don't like a lot of quantitative stuff, so you want to avoid things that are quantitative. Whatever your 5 factors are, I would like you to list them. Again, I've simplified it to just 5. When you do this exercise again, in your own home, in your own time, you can obviously add more factors, but just list out 5 factors that are important to you, whatever they might be. And I want you to list them into these light green boxes. Obviously it's black and white, but just the light green boxes on the far left. Okay? Anyone confused? Anyone stuck, not knowing what's going on? Yes?
I just wanted to ask, would you stay at home with that count as real or
Say that again?
Would we put stay at home as a career?
Yeah, if you want to prefer to stay at home, maybe to be a carer or for parenting duties, or that could be something you want to pursue. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. These don't have to be necessarily. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a paid career. Like it could be something like a volunteer thing that you'd like to do. Whatever it is, please. We're doing an exercise. I'll give you a paper. Just have a seat. I'll explain that.
Where should I sit?
Just sit anywhere that's the space. Yeah. Thanks.
So all the factors.
Any factor you want to name, any factor that's important to you. When you think about different professions, what helps you discern between them? What's something that will be an important thing to go, okay, this career is stronger in this factor than that factor. What are those factors? How are we going? Everyone got some factors? Anyone confused? Any questions? So we're doing a career evaluation exercise. On the top columns, list out different careers that you're thinking about. It's on the other page. Think about different careers that you're listing.
I know what I want to do.
Yeah? Okay. Cool.
I'm here for vibe.
Say again?
I'm here for vibes.
You're here for?
Vibes.
Vibes. Okay, cool. All right. Well, if you want, you can still kind of help. Yeah. So this is where you list out different careers, and these are factors that help you decide between the careers. All right. Everyone going good with the factors? So, if you're stuck with factors, I gave a few ideas in my presentation, but you don't have to stick to them. I talked about money, I talked about impact, I talked about alignment with faith, I talked about flexibility, I talked about geography, I talked about, what else did I talk about? I talked about I don't know, if maybe a factor could be how much technology is involved. Maybe you like tech. Maybe you like working, you want something that has a relatively high interaction with people. Maybe you're a very social person, so how sociable the job is important to you. Maybe it's about, you like to be in nature. You want to have a job, you want to measure your jobs by interaction with the natural environment. Whatever it might be. There's 6-7 factors I've just mentioned now. All right, once you've done that, we're going to move along just for time. Okay. Guys, just bring it in for a second. Now, I want you to put a score of 1 to 5 in each of the boxes for each of those jobs. So let's say my first factor is how flexible the work environment is. So if I have 5 jobs here, I'm going to score them according to that criteria. So if the first job has very high level of flexibility, I might put a 5. If the other job has low level of flexibility, I'll put a 2. And then so on and so forth. Yeah? Is that all clear? You're scoring every box by the column of the job, and the row is the factor from 1 to 5. Okay? And don't look, this is a really quick exercise. I know it's not a lot of time. So we're just going to spend, just really quickly, just whatever comes to mind, just put it down. You'll inshallah be able to do it again in your own time. All right, I'm going to give you guys just 3 minutes to do it.
Tell me about Wholesum. So what's the, so what
it's an investment fund. So people can put their money and help them generate a return from that money. And we do it obviously in a halal way, but also it's a fund. Yeah, it's a fund. Yeah.
And what do you invest? So you just invest?
We invest in various different assets that have that obviously Islamic, but they also try and do positive things as well. So, like for example, we invest into small businesses, we invest into micro entrepreneurs. We do some stock market investing as well. We don't do startup investments just yet because they're a bit more risky. Inshallah, in the future maybe, but. Iqbal, yeah, we do invest in Iqbal. Yeah, we invest in Iqbal. Yeah. So the general manager was here. Yeah. All right, guys, just another minute and a half. Really quick, guys. Unfortunately, we can't do a perfect exercise today, but you can do it in your own time. Once you've put your scores at the bottom, can you add up the scores vertically? So see how it says total score? You add up the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, and you put the total score at the bottom. Who's finished? Anyone? What were your careers, if you don't mind us sharing?
Teaching.
Yes? Yes? You put 2?
Yeah, I don't know what else.
Okay. Were you able to separate between them? So you got one was 19, one was 17? Okay. Cool. Very good. Yes, you finished as well, right? What were your careers? Shh, guys.
International studies, business, education, law, and computer science.
Okay. Very good. What are these?
Sorry?
What are the crossings out meant to be? We're putting scores. So you put numbers 1 to 5. Yeah. No. 1 to 5. And the thing is, I would recommend not putting degree names, put a career. Because you're not doing a degree. You're doing a degree to get to a career, but what is the actual job? So guys, just a bit of feedback. On the top, the careers are meant to be real jobs and roles, not degrees. Degrees, yeah, like that's what you study, but when you're evaluating, you're not evaluating the degree. You're not going to be a student for the rest of your lives, I hope. Like me, I was a student for like 20 years. You're going to work, you're going to do something. So when you're evaluating, we're evaluating the career or the role. Yes. Yes, for sure. Do you need a pen? All right. All right, another 30 seconds, guys. Gonna wrap it up real quick.
Consulting make a lot of money?
I can, yeah, if you get to a very senior level.
Right, in any company or like?
There's obviously specialist consulting firms, but also you can then become an in-house consultant with a company. In-house consulting is usually, you do what you would have done for clients, but you do it for the company you work in. So a lot of consultants are typically in strategy and management, and when they go in-house, they work within the strategy team of the company.
So it's like internally?
Internal, yeah. So one is client-facing, one is internal. Professional service, you do work with clients, but then if you work for your own company, you do internally. All right, last 30 seconds, guys. Last 15 seconds. All right, you want to start now adding up your scores, please? Guys, just bring it in. Can you add up your scores at the bottom? How are you guys going? Yeah? Good stuff. You finished? All right, guys, can we just bring it in, guys? Shh. I know it's not a lot of time to do something that requires a lot of thinking, so I apologize. It's more I wanted to give you guys some exposure. Please, by all means, do this again in your own time. And one other thing we didn't do today is not all the factors are necessarily the same level of importance to you. So a more advanced version of this, you'd apply weightings. So you might say this factor is a weighting of 5. This factor, it's there, but it's maybe a weighting of 2. So you can apply weightings to help you get even more scientific if you want to. But this is simplified. We have a couple of people who finished at the front and in the middle. would you like to just share with us, was this exercise helpful?
We did an exercise like this in school.
Oh, okay.
So this is my second time doing it.
Yep.
We did it once like at the beginning of year 11.
Okay.
It's been like a good
Yep, you've done it. Okay, if you did it once, are you still in year 11 or year 12?
I graduated year 12.
Oh, you graduated 12, so it's been a while since you've done it. Has it changed since then?
I think so, because
Yep.
my ideas of like what I want to do in the future have changed over time.
Very cool, very cool. That's actually a great insight. So one thing to realize is you might be doing this not once in your life, but many times in your life. And people are constantly reinventing. So like in my own case, I started my career in management consulting, then I went and worked in finance, traditional finance, and then I ended up working in startup finance. So I've gone through that exercise a few times in evaluating different options. So yeah, you don't just do it once, you do it regularly. The second thing to realize is what you value might change. What you think is really important when you're 19 is going to be really different what you might think when you're about 30, right? And that's okay. Life will change, priorities will change, and so things and how you feel about them will change, right? So that's really important. Anyone have any surprising results they want to share? Anyone kind of did this exercise and they got an unexpected outcome? Yes?
There's two of my potential.
Misha, can we get some Chupa Chups sent around? People are... Yeah, I'll give you two. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't give them out to more people.
Yeah, two of my jobs got the same score.
Yes.
So they're quite similar, I think.
Yes.
In terms of my factors.
Okay. And does that confuse you, or is it helpful to understand it that way?
I think I need to add more factors.
Yep. To help differentiate? Yeah. Yes, very good. So yeah, that's absolutely right. And the thing is, sometimes you might have a guess about what those factors are, and then you go and do some work experience, you do some internship, or you go and speak to people in that field, and they give you another perspective. So this is not just the end, it's a start of that journey. All right, we're going to move on just for interest of time. Who's heard of Ikigai? You've heard of Ikigai? What is Ikigai? Guys, just quieten down, please. Yes. Can we have a Chupa Chup here, please?
I'm not really sure, but I think it's like a method that you use to like see which career like you best want to do. Like the one I came across, it was like some sort of like chart thing, and it's like and you basically like write all the different careers that you want to do, and like it all just narrows down to one.
Yeah, so a really good point there is it helps you think about framing your careers. Can someone add to that and tell me what Ikigai means?
I don't know what it means, like life in Japanese.
It's part of that. You got halfway there. Anyone add? Passion, yes, very good. So I'll explain the basic definitions. It comes from a Japanese word, and it's the aggregation of two words. It's sort of like a compound word. The word iki is life, and the word gai means worth. And so when you put them together, what does it mean? It means living a life that's worth living, or living a life of benefit. And if you live a life of benefit and worth that you feel, then it's more likely you'll be engaged in what you do. If there is a disconnect, then you're likely to feel frustrated, upset, disappointed, angry, depressed, and you might feel that you're not connecting with people around you. Right? It's just really important to think really hard about these things. So that's why some of the factors we think are really important may not be as important down the track, right? Things like just money and position. So there's a chart here that breaks down the 4 dimensions of Ikigai. So one thing is to think about what are the things you love doing, right? These are your passions, okay? The other thing is looking at what are you good at? So what do you really excel at doing? Are you, for example, a very analytic person? Are you a very quantitative person? Are you a very social person? Are you are you able to be very diplomatic and you bring people together and create harmony? What is it that you're really good at? That is your profession. Then your vocation, just to separate between vocation and profession, vocation is what actually pays you to do that or sustains you. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid numerically or through money. You could be sustained through the fact that you get sponsored, or you volunteer, or there's some other ways to keep you going. Now, it's important, and actually, it's something we can't disregard. So I remember one of my early days, I had a lot of these friends who just pick up and go volunteering in Africa, or they go and live on nothing for a while. One of the things I often struggled with is I wanted to pursue my passions, but as the eldest son in a migrant family, with my parents were middle class, I had to also think about how do I help them out financially. So I was always kind of juggling between getting work to get me through uni and to do the things. I also wanted to travel and do these exciting activities overseas, but I also needed to make sure my parents were looked after and I wanted to help them. So I was always juggling between the two. And so vocation is an important consideration, because if no one's going to pay you, you're not going to sustain yourself, then you're not fulfilling your aman and your haqq towards your family and to your community as well. So this is something that we need to also think about. The last one is mission. It's mission. And mission is around the fact about thinking, okay, I might find something that pays me, I might do something I like, I might do something that I'm good at, but is it something that actually benefits the world or what the world needs? Right? If we can merge those four things together, we have found the sweet spot of the ikigai. We're doing something that we love, we're doing something that we're good at, with something that pays us, and it's something that the world needs. Okay? Now, you might think, okay, is that chasing a unicorn? Does that actually exist? Well, the thing is, it is actually possible to do that in many different careers. So I don't want you to think about, this is like some sort of a really unusual career somewhere in another part of the world. You could be doing that right here, in your own community, in your own professions. So this next exercise is to kind of really quickly help shape a way for you to think about your career. So what I want you to do, in the interest of time, I want you to pick one of these professions. It might not be something you're doing. And if you want, you can cross one of them out and just choose something else. I just put something out there as prompts. And what I want you guys to do is, for one of the columns, I want you to answer those 4 questions. So let's say, for example, you are a teacher. What would a teacher love doing? What's kind of like a passion about teaching? Right? It could be, for example, they really like to inspire young minds. They might really like to impart knowledge, whatever it might be. Then if you think about what does the world need? Well, the world needs educators. People need to be educated. The next generation need good, wholesome education so that they can go out in the world and do things. What are you good at? A teacher might be really good at lesson planning. They might be good at classroom management. They might be really good at organizing. Right? They might be really good at inspiring people. Those are skills that they have. And the 4th thing is, what can they be paid? Or what you can be paid. Well, a teacher can be paid a salary. They can be paid through the public school system. If they work as a teacher in the public school, they could also be a private school teacher. They could also be a tutor at a tutoring company. They could be a university lecturer. They could run their own online courses. You don't have to be working, you just get paid through your own online modules that you run. So there's many different ways you can do it. And what I wanted to kind of demonstrate is that these 4 questions help open your mind towards possibility, right? So there's obviously the standard career. So for example, I met a teacher the other day she's teaching at a school. It's a special needs school. And she is really passionate about technology. So she's combining her passion for teaching special needs children with technology, and she merges the two together. So she's crafting her own career and her own role in her own vision, right? And that's something a lot of people do, and you should not be afraid to do that. You can always put up your hand, make a suggestion to your manager, to your management, and say, I really like this, can I bring it in? Right? And this is part of what I mentioned early on, interdisciplinary. You often spark the greatest ideas from hearing about someone from another field, another sector, another community, and they give you an idea on how you might do your own job. Right? And so in her case, I think her husband is a technologist, and so she draws upon that from another field altogether to help her achieve and further her own mission, which is to empower the special needs children. So this is what's really possible, and it requires us to have that willingness to learn and be flexible to learning, right? So you might have a doctor who might speak to an engineer. You might have a maths teacher who talks to a psychologist. You might have a financial planner talking to a social worker. And they might be coming up ways of help, for example, communities that have low financial literacy and help them empower. So these are sorts of the connections that can happen. And I want you guys to think a little bit harder. I didn't talk a lot about it in this section, in this workshop, because we didn't have time, but networking is another really important thing. So you guys have come into a group here. How many people here from Western Sydney? Majority. Anyone from Eastern Sydney? Yep. Anyone who's in public schools? Public schools? One? Private schools? Islamic schools? Yeah. So there's a bit of a mix already here, right? And probably I can see many different ethnic backgrounds probably as well. So that's an amazing network you can already form just amongst your group here. So some of my closest friends and some of the people I work closely with are not actually all in Sydney and not even from my own background. I have friends all around the world in many different communities, and we collaborate on different things. I'm about to head out to a 2-week trip to the Middle East, and I'm calling up my friends to organize events in Doha, in Riyadh, in Dubai, in many other places. And it's those friends who I networked with many years ago who are now working together, and I'm learning from them, and they're also learning from me. So that network is really, really powerful. All right, anyone want to share one? Who did one? Let's hear from this gentleman at the front. What did you do?
Finished. I've only done what you like.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll come back to you. Anyone finished a column? Yes. Can you share? What's your name?
Me?
Yes.
Marwa.
Marwa. Can we get Marwa a chop?
Thank you.
Okay, Marwa, would you like to share one?
Okay, so for Doha,
Yes.
so what I love is like helping people and like supporting individuals, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess for the mission part, I wrote like a person who wants to truly help people rather than focus on monetary value in that career. Like the workforce is very like financially dominated.
Yes.
And,
Very good. I like that.
and then one of the skills is discipline.
Yes.
Like in terms of working hard.
Yes.
And then you just get paid from the place you work.
Yeah, very, very simply right. I mean, there's a lot more, there's a lot in there, but I think those are a couple of really good points. And again, that resonates to you. So there's no objective standards or criteria for this. Is all about what makes sense to you. Because at the end of the day, you just justify it to yourself or to the people that are around you and support you. Like you might need to pitch this to your family members or your spouses or whoever it might be. I had to kind of do that exercise with my wife when I joined my own company. It's like, why are you doing this? Why does the world need this? So that's an example of that. So, and we don't have much time to go through it, but I hope that was helpful. Was it helpful? Yeah. Kind of think about it? Yeah? Great. The last thing I want to talk about is big, hairy goals. We've got only 2 minutes. I want to share with you my hairy goals, really big, hairy goals, things that keep me up, not keep me up at night per se, but really consume my thinking. It consumes how I think about the world, who I spend time with, what I read, and I'm constantly trying to think about how do I work towards these big goals. All right? Your goals are going to be unique to you. So I want to make that clear. The second thing I want to make clear is everyone has value. Everyone's goal is valuable. Just because one person's goals are different to another's does not mean that one is lesser or more important than another. Okay? But I want you guys to think about big, hairy goals because, and this is something that I draw a lot of inspiration from some of our early Islamic scholars, like Imam Ghazali, for example. Who knows Imam Ghazali? Anyone? Yeah? Imam Ghazali was a theologian, philosopher, but he actually had a lot of really cool productivity hacks. So if you guys read productivity hacks and how to improve, one of the things he spoke a lot about was being conscious about your time, being purposeful with your time. So every day is something that you work towards your ultimate goal. Right? So that's something I really take from him. So I'm going to show you my 3 big goals. I call them the 10-1-1. The first goal for me is I want to reduce or bring 10 million people out of poverty. That's my long-term life, one of my ambitions. Right? I've only scratched the surface. I'm nowhere near that goal. But that's what I really want to work towards. And I want to dedicate all my time to try and do that. And that's because one reason is no poverty is the first United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that was decided by all the world's countries. Another reason is that we still have about a billion people who are living on less than $1 a day, right? And the third reason is in our Islamic tradition, Rasul says that whoever alleviates the hardship of someone, Allah will alleviate their hardship in the hereafter. The second goal for me is I want to inspire 1 million young people. I believe young people are the future, biologically absolutely, but they are also capable of doing amazing things. They're not going to be restricted by the shackles of what might have restricted previous generations, right? And so we can't just rely on the government or some education system. And the other thing, of course, is that we know that there's the hadith about 5 before 5, and the top one there is youth. Right? So value your youth before your old age. Right? Don't wait until you're like, okay, I'll get serious about life later on. Don't underestimate yourself. There are people who are 17 and 16 years old. Malala Yousafzai won the Nobel Prize for Peace. Nobel Prize for Peace. That's a bit of tongue twister. And she was just in her teens, right? So people are doing incredible things in their own youth. The last goal for me is to inspire 1 million philanthropists. To make the change we want to do, we need to get people to put serious money behind it. A lot of people have a lot of money. Even within our Muslim community here in Australia, in Sydney, there are people with bucketloads of money. I live in Punchbowl, and every second car I see is like a Mercedes. And I'm thinking, how on earth are they affording a Mercedes, right? So there's a lot of money, but if we can direct that money towards good, we can uplift the whole Ummah, right? And I think about one example, Uthman ibn Affan, the third righteous caliph, his endowment, the endowment that he bequeathed, which is he gave a bunch of land, including orchards, date orchards, that is still sustaining the Hujjaj in Saudi still today, after 1400 years. They use the land and the revenues from the land to refurbish and build hotels and to feed the pilgrims. So you can imagine how powerful that stuff is. And he just gave it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's still counting towards his reward all these years later. And you can imagine the millions of people that go there. So, what's your big hairy goal? And I want to say that there's something, every one of you have something that the world needs. No one person, no matter where they are, what condition they're in, whether they have a disability, whether they're from a lower socioeconomic background, it doesn't matter. The world needs you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you on this earth for a reason. Right? So everyone is valued, no matter who they are. And the thing I want to think about is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fashioned you and created you with something. So combining the fact that the world needs you with the fact that you are endowed with your own special gifts, what is your big hairy goal? 1 minute to think about it. I know it's not, it's a big decision thing, but just have a go at putting something down. Okay? I'll give you guys a minute because we're sort of running out of time. Okay, while you're sort of wrapping up your thoughts, I'll explain one reason why it's important to think about that. And the reason I say that is because I remember there was a time in my HSC in year 12 where I was ranking much lower than I was hoping for, and I wasn't tracking towards my goal, and I was getting really upset and frustrated. And I remember coming home one day, and just thinking like, I just want to give up. I don't want to bother with this thing. It's just too much pressure, too much stress. And then I was thinking to myself two things. One was that I felt at that time thinking, I can be grateful for the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided me. My parents' support, the books that I have, my teachers. So that should give me a source of strength. But the other thing as well is that it doesn't matter what my results are right now. I'm working towards a big goal. So my current struggle or where I'm at right now will not define my long-term goal, because that's still decades away. Yes, this is an important step towards that goal, but just because I'm having a little bit of a shortcoming, or maybe I'm taking a bit more of a meandering, curvy path, doesn't mean I can't still work towards that goal. There are people out there working towards their goals in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It doesn't matter. It's not necessarily that you've achieved it by the time you're 25, you're all done. Okay? So that's why having a goal, and even if you don't necessarily have to share it with everyone, keeps you grounded and focused. Okay? And it will get you through your darkest days. It'll get you through the days where people doubt you. Okay? And sometimes your own self-doubt can be the biggest barrier to what you want to do. Okay? Anyone want to share their big hairy goal? Yes, please.
Well, I think in Muslim communities, stigma surrounding disabilities such as autism is really prevalent.
Yes.
And I'm on the spectrum myself, so inshallah in the future I want to work as a school counsellor, and in that I would want to help those who have, even if they're not on the spectrum, those who struggle with disability and mental health, because I feel like topics like that is kind of neglected in our community.
Yes, absolutely. Very much so. My friend would be cheering so much knowing that there's people like you out there, because he's got 2 boys on the spectrum. Absolutely, that's very special. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Any other volunteers? Anyone? Yes, please.
So I want to be one of the first scarf Muslim women on the global board of doctors.
Oh, wow.
Because it's all just old white men.
Yes, absolutely, they are. There's too many of them. We need representation, absolutely. Well done. Very cool. Thank you. Amazing. So look, I've taken a bit of extra time. I hope you don't mind. Hopefully that was beneficial. If you want to follow me along on LinkedIn, I post and share stuff as I go along on my journey. So you can follow me on that. It's a QR code to my LinkedIn. But thank you so much for participating. There's some more chapa chaps. We can just give them out. So please grab one as you go. Maybe, otherwise I'm just going to have them.
Sugar rush.
Sugar rush, yeah, but I've already had, this is way too sugary. Like, they say it's got no added sugar, but it's like full of sugar. So yeah, grab a chapa chap on your way, on your way out. Jazakumullah khair, thank you so much for your time. Have a good one and all the best.
Thank you.